This is my favorite part where I always wait a few seconds before I actually start so that the stream can start. And welcome to the Industry 4 Community Podcast. I'm your host with the most, Walker Reynolds. We have a very special, unplanned podcast for you guys. You guys may have saw the video a couple days ago where I announced it driving in my truck, like, hey, we're doing this podcast on Thursday with a new leader at HiveMQ, a new member of the senior leadership. And we're going to talk about past, present, and future of HiveMQ because these changes are massively significant. And we'll talk a little bit about what brought us to this this conversation more in a minute. But I want to bring Barry. It's Libert, right? It's Libert. Barry Libert, who is the chairman and CEO at HiveMQ. I'm going to let Barry introduce himself, but just a quick background. I'll tell you what I know. Barry joined the board in July with HiveMQ. He was brought into HiveMQ in July, and then kind of suddenly last week, it starts leaking out. Hey, the founders have stepped back. They're still on the board, but they've stepped back from their operational roles. There's a new CEO. They disappeared on LinkedIn. They disappeared on X. Everybody's like, what's going on at HiveMQ? I'm receiving all these DMs. I was just telling Barry before we went live, 800 messages, 800 messages on just this topic. What's going on at HiveMQ? So we're having this podcast because Barry and I have already had a conversation last week. It went exceptionally well. And I said, hey man, I'd love for us to do a podcast. And he said, let's do it. Let's just do it. He just said, I said, do you want to do it live or record it? He said, no, let's do it live. Barry said all the right things. So this is going to be a great conversation. Before we start, I want to say thank you to our host, Maestro Hub, or our sponsor. Maestro Hub is the sponsor of the Industry 4 community this month in October. Do me a favor. Take care of our sponsors. Go check out Maestro Hub. I got a chance to see a sneak peek into version 2, the new release that's coming out, going into beta by the end of the year. There's a bunch of really, really cool features, specifically centered around MCP. So anyway, thank you to Maestro Hub for sponsoring the community this month. With that, Barry Libert, why don't you quickly, thank you for joining us. I know you're a busy guy.
Welcome for having me today. Appreciate it. You should not be doing what you did, which is video while you're driving. And I even have someone doing that, which was quite amazing to me the other day. My wife would kill me for that stuff, let alone any other driver. But go for it anyway.
You know, it's funny. One of the reasons I bought a Tesla was so that I could use full self-driving while I film. So I have we have like a suction cup on the glass. Yep. And so that way I wouldn't have to worry about me being distracted. But I actually shot that video on my truck. So I have no excuse. But
okay, there you go.
So Barry, let me real quick. Here's how I know you. I know you from Anaconda. So yep. Anaconda, which is a implementation of Python for machine learning. I actually used Anaconda to develop our vision system for fullstrength.ai. So I own a fitness brand where we developed a vision system that uses pose estimation to predict 1 rep max in the deadlift, squat, bench press. Anaconda is the actual environment that we use for all of our source code. So that's how
I'm not going to try to do a lift like you were at 500 pounds by the end of the year. I just want to make sure you're really clear about that. I do.
But that's how I know you. You were, for four or 5 years, you were on the board and leading the efforts at Anaconda. And that's where so you've got 4 or 5 years in the AI space, and now you land at HiveMQ. So why don't you quickly just introduce who you are, and then let's get into the conversation.
Sure. My name is Barry Libert. I've been doing this for way too many years. We should say decades, about 45 years of this stuff. I basically am invited by board members, investors, and management teams to help to become, way back when, digital, then machine learning, which was how I got involved in Anaconda. And then most recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, in the AI space. The name of the company was called AI Matters, which has been since 2011. I was invited into Anaconda in 2019, the same way I was invited to HiveMQ by its investors at the time, General Catalyst, to help that company think about how to become customer obsessed. It is an amazing Python commercial provider, much like Red Hat is to Linux. And they have an amazing developers that started the business, which is Peter Wang and Travis Oliphant. But not unlike HiveMQ, although great, massive community, we didn't know we had 50 million users, which was massive, 1 million companies. We didn't know any of those things until I joined. They were more about the technology, less about customer obsession, and less about go-to-market. So a good balance there that was ultimately executed, and the same thing here. So
why does someone why does an organization reach out to Barry Libert? Like when they're looking to add someone to their board, what's the reason they're like, why does your name come up?
I'm an operator. I'm not an investor. I'm an operator for 45 years. I've written 6 books and more than 600 articles about the 3 things. One, the importance of being customer obsessed, which is how do you build network effects that engages customers. I don't mean just customers, but prospects and any partners into some sort of large and viral and vibrant network. 2, the power of data. And let me tell you why I think about data. I don't know you, you don't know me, but at scale, 50 million people, you can't know anybody 50 million people. You can't even know, according to statistics, 150 people. You need data to understand that. And these are things I've been writing about since 1995. My first board was AT&T. And the third thing is you need machine learning to basically, what I call is empathy at scale, to really understand what you want at scale. There is no way, I can barely remember what my wife wants, to be honest with you, or my kids. To really understand at scale what people want and to make sure you serve them the way they want to be served, not the way you want to serve them. People call me because most businesses want to serve their customers the way they want to be served, which is, I always say, companies spell service, S-E-R-V-U-S, serve us. That's why companies spell service. And really the way customers want to be served is spelled S-E-R-V-I-C-E.
Well, so you're the guy. One of the things that you see in your background and is that you seem to be the guy. I'm going to tell everyone kind of how we got to this conversation.
Sure.
But you seem to be the guy that people bring in when a founder-led organization is ready to overcome its barriers to scale and then scale, either for an injection of cash or plan for some type of exit, right? If you look at the patterns in your background, that's one of the patterns that shows up. There's other patterns that show up, and I don't want to get into that part yet. Yeah, I want to talk about that maybe a little later. But what I really want to ask is, I wasn't even going to ask this question, but it popped up. What is the problem? Why is it founders of tech companies fail to be, you use customer obsessed, I say aggressively focused on positive customer outcomes, right? Yep. I think that is I believe that what we get out of the market is a function of what we put into it. And therefore, in order for us to see value, make money, we must be aggressively focused on giving value to the people who use our services and our products. And to that end, we must know them intimately. We've got to spend so much time trying to learn who our customers are so that we can do 2 things: solve problems they know they have, but more importantly, also solve problems they don't know they have, right? Aggressively focused on positive customer outcomes. Why is it, obviously there's a premise here, maybe you could disagree with the premise, but why is it that founder-led companies struggle with that idea and they have to bring someone in who specializes in it?
Yeah, I think, listen, I work for technical founders all the time. I have a lot of companies in my portfolio even now, and they're all technically led, right? In many shapes and forms. Technical founders are spectacular understanding at the very beginning of time, which is called day one thinking, which is what Jeff Bezos talks about, right? What a customer wants, what the developer community wants. And they build something a problem that they suffer with, that they also want to basically solve that problem from a perspective that is valuable to the developer community. They do spectacular work. There's no way that Anaconda could have gotten to 50 million users if Peter Wang and Travis Elephant didn't understand the power of Python and why and what type of problems they were solving. The difference is, and the same thing with the founders of HiveMQ, the difference is the ability to understand how that also translates to the enterprise and to the partner community is part of the equation for scaling. And did I lose you, Walker, or just
no? I'm still here. I'm fixing the echo in my audio. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good. I just want to make sure you're okay. I may have lost you already. You may have said,
No,
"Gee, I don't
you're
know
not.
what
No, this is a good
talking
answer.
about."
This is a good answer.
So I think technical founders do something I could never do, and I've started my own companies. They do something which is they understand the technical problems of developers. They are not the best of understanding the enterprise problems when you have compliance and governance and observability, and you have to deal with finance departments, the sales and marketing departments. That is not their love. That's not where they vacation.
Right. It's always there. It's the, I used to say the Jobs. One of the things I love Steve Jobs, and I think you would probably agree with Jobs on a lot of things, but probably with the way he handles people. Just in our limited interaction, I think you would probably disagree with the way he handled people. However, I love Jobs. And one of the things that I absolutely love about Jobs was that Jobs was hyper focused on the customer experience. He would say that we must always start with the customer experience and work our way back. No one gives a shit about the technology. The customer doesn't care about the tech. The customer cares about what the tech does for them, right? He used to say that all the time. And when he gave the answer about he gives a masterclass answer when he made the decision to get rid of OpenDoc as the underlying backend, and one of the developers is like, "What have you been doing for the last 5 years, and why are you qualified to pick OpenDoc?" And he talks about the first laser writer, and he's like, "No one cares that we developed all this amazing technology in the print controller and stuff. What they care about is what's on this piece of paper. Do you want this?" Right? And to HiveMQ, I'm going to talk a little bit about the background here. How did we get to this? So we are working with HiveMQ. 4.0 Solutions is working with HiveMQ to answer. They want you to try and turn your audio down just a hair, Barry.
Okay,
I'm saying
sure.
There's some background.
Sure.
So we were getting ready. What we were supposed to do this morning for the community, if you guys want to know, we were supposed to be doing a webinar relaunching Pulse. If you guys had been at Prove It in February, HiveMQ did a masterclass in launching the new Pulse intelligence platform. Okay. And they created a ton of buzz, and they were getting ready to go into beta. And Magnus and I were having a meeting, last week about this new release, this new webinar. Why are we doing a webinar in October for a product that was announced in February? Well, the answer is they ran into technical issues with scale. That is, HiveMQ handles just an insane number of messages per second. Any intelligence platform you are going to bolt onto HiveMQ, Pulse is an intelligence platform, has got to be able to handle that same throughput. And during beta, they ran into all sorts of problems with scale. So they had to go back to the drawing board. They rebuilt it from the ground up, and now it scales with the broker. And so we were getting ready to do a webinar where we were going to announce the new Pulse. In our prep meeting, I mentioned Dominic, one of the founders. If you guys want to know why it is I work with HiveMQ, it was really two people. I was working with HiveMQ because I believe in leadership. Leadership will lead the way. You make your decision based on who leads a company. I was there because of Dominic and Magnus. All the issues with HiveMQ pricing and everyone complaining about why can't they get pricing right and, yada, yada. I trusted that Dom would figure it out. And so I was all in on HiveMQ because of Dominic. And I was all in on the technology and the go-to-market because of Magnus, the working closely with them. I find out in the meeting, Dominic is no longer the CEO. Literally, it literally had just happened. His LinkedIn was gone. His X was gone. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? And Magnus couldn't really answer. He didn't think it was his place to answer the questions. And he's like, I think you need to talk to Barry. So we schedule a meeting. I have an analyst team, just so you guys know, how do I know everything I know about companies? Part of it is they reach out to me, but I have a team of analysts who analyze companies for me. And they did an analysis of Barry being the new CEO, and they gave me 7 options of where HiveMQ was likely going. One of them was they're looking for an aggressive cash influx. One was they're bringing Barry in to scale the company for an exit within the next 24 to 36 months. One of the options was they're bringing Barry in to take the company into a different direction focused on AI. However, none of the options in there said anything about an aggressive focus on positive customer outcomes. So I asked Barry, hey, can we have a call? And we jump on a call. And I just lay it out for him. I'm like, listen, I'm on this call to decide if I'm going to keep working with HiveMQ. I don't know if I'm going to be the right person to do this webinar if you guys are going in six of these 7 options. So if there's only one of these 7 is possible, if 6 of them means I can't work with you anymore. Okay. The AI one is one I could work on, assuming you and Barry and I share the same value. So we had a hour-long conversation. Actually, I think we went longer than that. And we just had a completely open conversation about what the hell happened and blah, blah, blah. And Barry answered all the questions. I actually said this, Barry, to my team. After our call, I said to Vaughn and Josh, either that guy has a team of people who did an immense amount of research on me and they prepped him for who I am, and he's just that good at manipulating people, and he was just inside my head, or Barry and I are 2 peas in the same pot. Like,
no, I hope it's the second, because I don't really think I have ESP, and there's no mind meld going on between you and me. Yes. So no, I think the reason you and I get along is I think this is the only way to be in the world. Forget about this company. Yes. I think it's the only way to be in the world, right? It's taken me a long time to get here, although I've thought about this and been part of this journey forever. I always say it took my wife a long time to train me in the power of humanity and human kindness. So I think it's a way to scale businesses and make business personal. There's that old expression, business is not personal. That's no way that's true. Business is very personal to everybody.
Especially when it comes to your customers.
Yeah, and just into employees. You said something about HiveMQ, which I think is really true. The technology is spectacular. And you got to give the founders, including Dominic and Christian, huge credit, and Christoph, huge credit for doing something that was magnificent in building a technology. No different than you have to give Travis and Peter tremendous kudos for building something that is magnificent, right? I think the other thing you didn't know, which is I told this to investors when they first started recruiting me, is the team is magnificent. You'll meet more of them along the way here. You met Magnus, yep. But I'm telling you, the one thing I told the investors when they started recruiting me is the team is magnificent. All 145 of them are really amazing across marketing, sales, finance, people, operations, technology, engineering, product. It is a spectacular team that really knows how to be customer obsessed. And so releasing that energy into the universe, I don't think it's going to be very hard for the company.
Well, let me set a premise and then ask you a question. So the elephant in the room is, and the chat can confirm this or deny it or tell me I'm full of shit or say, yes, he's right. I told you, HiveMQ does not have a tech problem. Like, it's never been a tech issue. Okay. The tech in the beginning, four years ago, you basically had the 2 elite MQTT brokers in the market were EMQX and HiveMQ. We did benchmarking across like 8 different message queues, and HiveMQ and EMQX were the top 2. But EMQX was about 30% ahead in terms of total throughput from HiveMQ. Then over a 2-year period, HiveMQ kept getting better and better. We would benchmark every 6 months. HiveMQ would get better and better, especially with bridging. So horizontal and vertical bridging, that's kind of where they've just mastered the art of sending those messages to many brokers behind, building massive clusters of brokers. HiveMQ just mastered that art. Over a course of 2 years, the throughput basically was even. And now HiveMQ is a little ahead of EMQX in terms of total throughput. It's never been about tech. The issue has always been messaging, go-to-market, and execution. And the number one complaint anyone is going to have about HiveMQ is either it's too expensive or I cannot get an answer on pricing. The number of manufacturers who have said to me, Walker, I reached out to HiveMQ and I can't even get an answer. They will not quote me. They will not give me an answer on what this cost is going to be. So that's kind of the elephant in the room. And it's a thing that I've been telling HiveMQ for a year and a half. They brought in a bunch of different sales leaders and every time they promised it was going to change. So that's kind of the elephant in the room. But the question I have for you is, you come in July, you join the board in July, and then a few months later, Dom and the founders step back with no notice. Like, we don't hear, the market just finds out accidentally. The market just finds out accidentally that the founders are gone. Can you just for the sake of the audience, what happened from July all the way up until our conversation last week? What precipitated that? What can you share? Obviously, if you can't share stuff, don't feel obligated to share it, but what happened?
Yeah, I think Dominic did a spectacular job. And this happens in all my companies. It does a spectacular job realizing, as great founders do, that they have their own limitations, right? Just like I do. Everyone in life has limitations. I think he realized there were some limitations in him and the founder's ability to scale the company to realize the full value of its technology, as you just said. Some of those limitations, before we get to pricing, if you don't mind, is go back to strategy. You call messaging. I'll call it strategy and direction. What's the North Star? What's the execution to get to that North Star, which is customer obsessed solutions that customers really value with measurable ROI? And then how do they scale the business with systems, which most founders don't like? Systems and repeatable processes and organization structures. I mean, these are entrepreneurs who like the fact that they're freewheeling, can do things that are creative. And all of a sudden, businesses get to a place like 100, 200 people. And those systems that start these 0 to 1 companies begin to fall apart, right? Because they need to scale. I would say that the rails start falling off the train.
The cracks show.
Or vice versa.
The cracks start showing, things start falling through those cracks.
It is. It's hard because people who can build 0 to 1 don't like 1 to 2, right? It's a very simple message. And they're very different types of people. As you can see in all these organizations, very, very, very few founders can scale from 1 to 2. They oftentimes start another startup, as you know. And so I think what happened was, as you experience and the customers experience, as we tried to start scaling our strategy, which drives into what's our product and our people and our process, pricing starts falling apart as well. Not just the pricing model, but the ability to provide pricing. And so that's a process, right? Pricing is a process, right? Which is, how do you provide a price to different organizations based on a variety of use cases that is a scalable model that people feel fairly treated. Customers think, wow, that is a fair price. It reflects the value I'm getting. If you start thinking from customer in, not product out, right? It's fair from what I'm getting. It's measurable in terms of ROI I can achieve in real time. That process starts to fall apart when you go from 1 to 2. And that's what you're seeing and the customers are experiencing. All that's going to be fixed, as you will see in the next 90 days. So and you can always see, we launched a new website today.
Yep.
You're going to see our new positioning. We're going to be extremely customer obsessed in this journey. We will know the ROI for our customers, and we will know the fact that you need to know more than 1 million people come to us. That's a big lead generation. Think about how big that lead funnel is.
Yeah.
1 million come to us every single year more. We need to know what those people want and know better than they want what they need to know. No different than Steve Jobs used to say.
Just so you guys know, the audience knows, they literally between 300,000 and 400,000 people per quarter are installing HiveMQ. That is like through the lead generation mechanisms. So either they're filling out a form, or they're downloading a community edition, or there's 300 to 400,000 new potentials every quarter at HiveMQ.
That is correct, which means if you think about from a customer, I'm going to say from customer perspective, and given I'm a network guy, we all have our own rose-colored glasses, right? So if I can only know 150 people in the world, but there's a lot more than 150 people in the world, as you know, there's 7 or 8 billion right now. And since I'm a network guy, then you got to ask yourself, how do you connect those 1 million people to each other? Just like you're building a community here, right? How do you build a community that is empathetic to one another and that ultimately wants to reinforce their learnings, grow the community? Remember, I'm an open source guy, right? So think about Anaconda and Python. Think about MQTT as basically an open source environment as well. How do you build those communities so that they're self-replicating, viral in their nature, and vibrant, so they provide new insights and innovations along the way?
But Rick Bellata just wrote a question here. Do you know Rick Bellata?
I do not. Not that I know. I should say, hi, Rick. Nice to meet you.
All right. So Rick is kind of he's a legend in our industry. Rick played a huge role in developing system platform for Aviva. In fact, he was the lead on there. Before that, he developed, I Rick, put in the name of the thing that you sold to SAP, Lighthammer. So he developed a message bus called Lighthammer that he ultimately sold to SAP, and then he went to Wonderware and he developed System Platform, which was the version 10 of Wonderware InTouch, which kind of it's ubiquitous in our industry. It's basically the single pane of glass in our industry that ultimately Ignition started overtaking. Then he went from there and he developed ThingWorks, which ultimately went to PTC. And then, Rick consults for companies all across our industry. Rick and I were talking last night. Oh, actually, over the last few days, we've been talking about you as the new CEO. And I was telling him, he's like, hey, listen, this is clearly, exit strat. Like I told him I'm very optimistic. And he said, until they sell, because obviously now I'm not saying you're going to sell the company. We're trying to predict, right? We're like, okay, where are you guys going? But let's say that you're here to grow the company for an exit and a possible sale. That's always on the table. I don't care so much whether a company sells. I care who they sell to. And I care why they sell to that organization. Do they go to the highest bidder? Do they go to the bidder that can go from 2 to 3? Do they go to the bidder who can take what you've built and realize the mission better than you can, right? Or is it, hey, it's time to make as much money for the investors as we possibly can? I don't believe that our markets are zero sum. I do believe you can get very wealthy and positively impact the world at the same time. You can make decisions based on values. You don't always have to make decisions based on money. So I'm a pretty optimistic person. But
yeah, I don't think that's the company's agenda to exit this company. In fact, quite the opposite.
Good, because that's what you told me. You told me that
quite the opposite. I think. First of all, I know what our near term, and I mean, it's all public for me. I now have a few AI unicorns to my name. I think I've got a few more in my portfolio already.
Yep.
I do not think exiting is the journey for me, right? I just don't think of that as a journey.
Okay.
I think the journey here is to build a large and basically very viral community of people that care about the same things you care about, that we care about. And I don't think that, so far we've been a product and a feature company, as you said, not a customer and a network company. Those are very, very different. They're related, but they're not exactly aligned, those things. You could build great products and have no customer intimacy, and you could build great intimacy and have crappy products. I just want to make sure. Doing them together is really hard. So I think the first journey for this company, you're going to start seeing this, is to build a massive community where people fundamentally care about what we do and how we do it. Because if I believe what you believe, that we're going to be customer intimate, then we end up with something like looks like Apple, right? Which is that it is a vibrant forever, right?
Yes.
The second thing I think will be is we. So I saw text about raising 60 million. Yeah. There is no doubt having a few AI companies right now.
Rick, Josh, put Rick's comment up, the original one, the significant amount of investment thus far. Put that back up, please.
Yep, 60 million. In some regards, that is a big number to some. It is minuscule compared to some of the companies that I'm involved with that are raising AI capital. Right. It's all relative. I always say in the SaaS world, 60 is pretty good. In the AI world, it's on the wrong side of the equation. There's $9 trillion that's going to be spent in the AI world. I really believe, and I said this to Dominic when I met him, that IoT is a part of, literally, I think it's critical to, and Industry 4.0 is critical to the AI world, machine to machine, machine to person, person to person. Agreed. It is part of this $9 trillion revolution that is propping up the global economy. And so I think we have to be part of that transition. So I think 60 million is a beginning for us. I think 1 million new leads a year is a beginning for us.
So to that point, do you care? So you've spent since July. Well, actually, here real quick. Why was the founder? Because this question's got to be answered. Why were the founders' exits so sudden? What happened there?
A great question. I can never speak for somebody else's. I mean, they resigned. It's not like no one forced them out of the circumstance. So I think Dominic and team began to realize, wait, this is a new way to think about the business. I give them credit for this. In fact, I think it's really quite courageous. Is the word I would use. They saw that there's a new way to run the business, new way to manage the business, new way to grow the business that was not within their strike zone. Remember, they still are on the board and they still own more than half the company. So they are hopefully large beneficiaries the way the founders were of Anaconda. for the journey that's now taking place, what I call HiveMQ 2.0. And they will see, just like many of the founders, these large, I mean, think about Bill Gates. I did work for Bill and team back in the late 90s. He's no longer running that company, or Steve Ballmer is no longer running the company. So I think the people who figure out what makes them truly great and leave room for the next people that are truly great in whatever they do, that shows the mark of a hugely courageous human.
So the core business. So you say HiveMQ 2.0. I want to get to some of these questions, but
Yep.
What you've been there long enough now to understand HiveMQ 1.0's core business.
I do.
Do you care to articulate the core business for the audience, and then let's talk about where that's going afterwards?
Sure. The way I think about, and this is just me, remember, I am a technologist, not a Dominic by any means, or Christoph or Christian. I want to be clear, right? I'm not a Peter or a Travis or any of my founders. The way I think about it is that they figured out how to move data at speed, which is both at edge and at speed, incredible speed, to basically create messaging. So having been an advisor to the AT&T board, having worked for Subra Iyer, who started a little company called WebEx, I've been around the, I'll say, movement of data at least 3 times now, right? And when I worked for WebEx, got sold to Cisco, I kept on saying, Subra, I love the fact that you can move data through WebEx, but what are they talking about? Same thing I used to say to the AT&T board. This is 1995. What are they talking about? Not just how much data we're moving, what do we learn from all that data, and how do we help people connect, right? If you start from my simple thesis, it's by humankinds connecting, right? The same thing here is how machines and humans are connecting through our messaging app. That's the baseline of what we built, both at edge and everything else that you said, through governance and all those things that are important.
And to Rick, you're spot on. So I'll infer from this that the macro repositioning is towards AI. That will definitely require more capital. Yes, the macro, based on our initial, I'll let Barry answer, but based on our initial conversations, that is the path that's being charted through Pulse, is to lay a bridge between the core business right now, which is messaging, the collect, the acquisition of data at high throughput through a intelligence platform where we can add context and convert data into decision for businesses. So that's where Pulse is going to come in. And then on top of that, either extending Pulse or some other offering, Barry can talk about, AI is going to play a massive role. And in his words, what he said to me was bringing AI to the plant floor was the word he used in our meeting. But
and to the C-suite, both directions, right? I want to make sure the C-suite, I happen to have been a board member of a company called Fix Software. That's in an adjacent period. They got sold, right, to Rockwell this few years back, which had the same thesis in a different way. But we realized we needed to bring AI and bring scoring mechanisms so you could build predictive analytics. And that was a few years back. And now autonomous decisions with humans in the loop that allow for machines and humans to interact with the data that's being acquired from the messaging. I think the way you need to think about it is very simple, is that ultimately, if we're sitting on the fastest moving data platform, then we need to think about this happened before I showed up. Pulse was, okay, what is the intelligence telling us about what data is being moved, and give that data and empower people and give agency to people at each edge of that,
and enrich it on the fly.
Absolutely. And not just the data that's coming from the company, but from third-party data as well, right? From other people's data sets, which is no different than Bloomberg does, things like that. And then finally, provide autonomy or autonomous actions, both for humans in the loop as well as for machines, to begin to act on that intelligence. So hopefully that makes sense. Even our own engineers say, wow, we know this is right. We've got to go from messaging, which used to be exciting, to human intelligence, to autonomous and artificial intelligence.
Right, because messaging is now a commodity.
Correct.
Right? It's the broker itself is now is literally an entry point, right? And the broker is an entry point. The real value now starts at Pulse, which is in an intelligence platform. When people ask what's an intelligence platform, data in and of itself is useless. It has to be, it needs to be mixed together with other data and other contexts to become valuable as information, something we can take action on, right?
Correct. And you need to have a framework. You have a framework, and like I've watched your podcast now, you have a framework for the conversations you're going to have. You provide context to the conversation. Right. So data in context is really important, right? Data without context is meaningless, right? It would not give any of us any help. And so you provide a context both for your branding. Right there it says 4.0 solutions. That's context. Maestro Hub is context already. Even the way we're situated on the screen provides context where everything is located on the screen. Everything on the right is all the Q&A that's happening. There's context, right? So data in context is meaningfully important. Recommendations and predictions that come out of that context is even more important. Barry, what are you going to go do with the company? That's a prediction, right? All those things, prediction markets. And then ultimately, actions that come out of the prediction and that allow machines and humans to act without having to do interpretation themselves, that's extraordinary value.
All right. So Josh, real quick, I'm going to ask a question, but while I'm asking this question, I want you to get ready to queue up Dylan's questions. We're going to do Dylan Dufresne's questions in order, starting with his, what did you learn from the Anaconda licensing backlash? Don't put that up yet, because I want to ask Barry a foundational question first that'll give the context for these questions about to answer. One of the things I like to ask OEMs when they bring me in is whether I'm talking to a manufacturer or whether I'm talking to an OEM, I always like to ask them, what problem do you solve? How do you get in front of the people who have the problem you solve? How do you convince them you can solve it? And then how do you execute the solution? Like that, I try to ask those 4 questions. But that is after I ask these first 3, which is this, and I'm going to ask them to you. You've been at HiveMQ long enough now to understand what HiveMQ's really good at, what HiveMQ's not, what HiveMQ has not been good at, and what's missing in the business. So as the context of the answers to Dylan's questions that we're going to start putting up here in a minute, do you care to quickly share, since July, what have you learned that HiveMQ is really good at?
HiveMQ is spectacular. You already said it.
Yep.
Spectacular, building a technology that fundamentally scales at a speed that very, very few companies can
Correct.
do. Spectacular. Believe it or not, I want to say this because I said this before I even joined the board. I think the HiveMQ is going to fashion any company I've ever been involved in. Remember, that's 400 companies. The management team here is very scalable, as is the engineering team and the product and sales teams. All of them understand where the company needs to go. It's not just Barry Libert who was obsessed with where they want to go. These people understand it, and that's why I think you're going to see a really rapid change without a lot of effort by Barry. To move in the direction that you already heard from Magnus.
I think you're down, Barry. You're downplaying your influence, because I saw it with my own eyes on the call. When we were on our call, and Mark, the chief marketing officer, was on there, and Magnus wasn't on there. There were nearly 1,000 people who were signed up for the Pulse launch today. Okay, there were nearly 1,000 people signed up for the webinar. Okay, to launch Pulse today.
Yep.
And I said to Barry, I really think we ought to delay this. And we should have a podcast. I think we need to lay the foundation of HiveMQ, the future of HiveMQ, before we ever announce Pulse. And Barry said, listen, I'm telling everyone internally, slow down. The message that you kept saying was, slow down. Slow down. Yes, let's pause it. We can wait 2 months to launch Pulse. We're in no hurry. Let's get this right. Slow down. I think you are downplaying your influence, because I am accustomed to people in your role being ready, fire, aim, right? And it sounds to me like you are got a little bit of ready, fire, aim in there. Hey, let's not lose our edge. But you're the voice on the team who's getting everyone to slow down and focus on how action leads to outcome.
That is correct. So you'll hear from all my teams that ultimately they think of me as Yoda, right? If you really think about humankind and you think about kindness, I keep trying to tell my teams, please slow down. They go, but Barry, you're intense. I go, I'm very intense. People say I'm intense and intimidating, but if you know my inside, they go very hearted. And so I go, yes, that's all true, but I'm a meditator. So the reality is I've learned to slow the whole thing down.
You want to know who you remind me of? Did you watch The Office? Did you watch The Office? Yeah. Of Robert California. Yeah. You remind me of Robert California, man.
Right. Take a breath. Everybody's always asking, how long far are we on the AI front? I'm like, barely in the first or second inning.
That's right.
Let's do it right. Let's not get too far in front of ourselves or our customers. Let's make sure we set the foundation the way they sit with our messaging now, and ensure that we've got everything right and done well before we just rush ahead like everybody else is doing.
So what is HiveMQ bad at? So from you've obviously taken a lay of the land. So we know what they're good at. I agree with you 1,000%. Tech has never been the problem at HiveMQ. What have you assessed that they are bad? And if you want, you would probably frame it as growth opportunities. So what are they bad at? And then what is missing? Because what they're bad at and what's missing are the things that you're going to change.
Right. So I think you've already summarized it perfectly. I don't think the company had a well-articulated strategy. It had an understanding of how to build a technology, but that doesn't frame the long-term reference in terms of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it and for whom. So I'm a big Simon Sinek guy. Yep. So start with why, I never understand Simon misses who, but why, how, what, and then Simon misses for whom you're doing it. Never understand how he missed that level. And the last thing he misses when you're going to do it. He missed those last two things when he does his lectures. And so if we slow down, I think they did a really good job understanding what I call HiveMQ 1.0, which is what do we need to do for the why around messaging. But in a larger context, the world really does move to autonomy. And it's not just through this AI initiative, right? You want autonomy, and I really mean this. You want agency for yourself and for the people you care about. Correct. I want agency for myself and for my family members. So autonomy is about freedom, if you think about it in a profound way.
Through enablement.
And that's all it is. Yeah. It's all it is, right? And so if you think about Maslow knew this, which is self-actualization, right? He understood this in 1945. And so I know he thinks this is all new. It's really not. And so if you slow down, you think about Maslow was community, right? Knowledge and love, or self-actualization at the top. Those things have been around for a long time. And I think the reality is we've got to think the same way. We've built the infrastructure, right? The lower levels, the sustenance and structure layers. We've got to build the community. We've got to build the data layers and the knowledge layers and then the self-actualization layers. And to articulate that clearly to our customers is the things like I'm going to correctly say that, what you said. I'm going to put those as opportunities for growth, not things that we don't do well yet, if you don't mind me using those.
I'm totally okay with it. As long as you're okay with me saying it's things that HiveMQ is bad at.
That's okay. Say whatever you want to listen. Hopefully we'll see you again in some period of time when you'll do another one of these podcasts and say, Barry, you're good at those things as well.
Well, let me say this. I went into our meeting last week. But the whole goal of that meeting was, am I going to keep working with HiveMQ? Where I was acquiring data so I can make the decision. Am I going to be a public voice? Am I going to work with them as a public voice? Because what are the values of the company going forward? At the end of the day, that's how I make my call. I don't make my call on technology. I don't make the call on return on investment. I have members of my team who worry about money. I don't ever worry about money. I'm always focused on strategy, vision, mission, and that, and the undergird of that is value, our values, right? So Dominic and I shared common values. Magnus and I share common values. I know that through human interaction, we have a common value set. I was trying to learn, do Barry and I have a common value set? Because if Barry and I have a common value set, then that means HiveMQ and 4.0 solutions will have a common value set. So I came out of that conversation. This is not hyperbole. The most excited I've ever been after a call. Vaughn can tell you this. Anyone on my team, Stephanie, Josh, Tanya, they can all tell you. I literally was like, it is as if this dude was in my fucking head. Like it was as if he was in my brain. It was so weird. And I was more excited coming out of that call with you than I ever been with an OEM. And if somebody asked me to place a bet, I literally said to my team, the two companies I'm the highest on in the market are HiveMQ and Flow Software. And that is because of their leadership. They have the market pinned in terms of technology, but their leadership is the reason I'm so high in them. And now HiveMQ moves to the top of that list. So now it becomes HiveMQ, Flow, and HiveBite together.
You are remarkably kind. We haven't even lifted weights together yet. So when we do that, and you're going to show me how to do something like that. Then we'll see it. I do think, and you see a simple.
Josh, bring Dylan's question up and let him, so that after this he can answer that.
Yeah, and I think Magnus is also right, which is that at scale, we are not a commodity. Yes, in the small installations we are, but at the scale at which our customers are beginning to install our messaging platform, on top of which we'll add the intelligence and basically called agentic layers, I don't think where people are going to be able to catch us, right? Especially when you're at the network layers we're going to have.
Oh, no question. But that doesn't change that messaging is a commodity. Like a broker by itself is a commodity.
Yes.
But there is a huge difference between a broker by itself, something I'm deploying on a Raspberry Pi and I'm doing messaging on the edge, and what HiveMQ does at the enterprise level. I literally just shot a video yesterday for Belden on this very topic. I was explaining why it is HiveMQ is able to scale using their bridging and fallback technology behind load balancers and enterprise administration, the enterprise security module. And that's just one of the modules that makes it possible to manage thousands of users, millions and millions of messages per minute across millions and millions of topics at scale. And
I hope that's going to be billions.
That's not a commodity. That's not a commodity.
Right. I'm hoping you're going to see us even scale those numbers to be more like the hyperscalers, that when someone looks back, they're going to go, wow, these guys have not just figured out how to scale into, I'm going to call up.
Well, you are in the billions. You are in the, when we did prove it, we were in the billions. We were doing 40 million messages. We were doing 40 million messages per minute. And we were in the billions per hour.
Correct. And so you're going to see us scale that to much larger numbers still, because I think we're going to pick up the speed of all that stuff, because I really believe in faster, better, cheaper as a way to think about value propositions. Not only will we be better and we'll be cheaper over time. I don't mean cheaper in terms of price point. I mean, just cheaper to execute, to basically retain your data, to understand what's happening at the data set. So cheaper as the total cost of ownership. I think you'll see us be faster. Now, do you want us to still answer that question? I hate to leave any.
Josh, go ahead and bring that original Dylan. So what we're going to do is we're going to rapid fire through all of Dylan's questions, and then I want you to come back to John Maldonado, where he says, are there any immediate changes? So you're going to do all of Dylan's in a row and then go to John's, and we'll just rapid fire.
So I'm going to answer Dylan's question. So what did I learn? Gosh, lots of things I learned.
Some people listen to this on Apple Podcasts and others. So I'll read the question out and then you can answer. So what did you learn from the Anaconda licensing backlash about communicating business model changes, and how does that apply to HiveMQ and products like HiveMQ Edge?
Yeah, so very simple. The thing we learned at Anaconda, we learned a few things, and we'll learn them here too as well. We did not know our customers at Anaconda. We don't know them here either. If you get 1 million new customers a year and you don't know their names, it's like me having 1 million new family members. I don't know their names. I know nothing about them. Then I really can't say I'm customer obsessed, right? I mean, I'm going to tell you, Amazon shows up every day at my door. They know exactly what I want.
Correct.
I tell my wife, no matter where I am, they keep following me around, right? And then they tell me they're coming. They tell me when they're coming. They tell me from where they're coming from. Yes. That is the first thing I learned at Anaconda. You really have to know, if you're going to be customer obsessed, everything about your customers and the partners in those customers. And the same thing we're going to have to do is at HiveMQ. And the second thing we learned was communicate. I don't think we did the best job constantly communicating all the changes. This is our first day out, and you forced us to do a new website because we were not going to go live on any of this stuff. So communicate, because I always say the walls have ears. They find out anything anyway. So the best you can do is communicate constantly. And the third thing is
totally agree. In this modern age, if you believe as an organization you can control the message, you are a fool.
You cannot.
You are a fool.
You forget it.
Yes.
Walls have ears. And the third thing we learned, right, is that you have to be able to not only understand how to communicate the changing in the models, you have to be able to communicate what's in it for the community as well. So those are 3 big lessons I have from Anaconda. All of those will apply here as well.
Great. Next question from Dylan. So what's your framework for balancing community expectations against commercial imperatives? And how do you know when you've pushed too hard? This is a really good question.
That's a great question.
Especially centered around land and expand, right? You know, the key to going to market is land and expand in software. Get the tool in the tool belt so that they use the tool to solve a problem, and they'll pay for the solution to the problem, not for the tool. Right? Land and expand at the end of the day is all about how do I get a product in people's hands for free so they can kick the tires and figure out how they use this tool. But to that point, to Dylan's question.
So that's a really good question, right? And the way I think about it is you watch Lovable made some mistakes about with their tokens and their pricing. They did an amazing job, Land. I mean, they went from nothing a year ago. People don't realize this, nothing a year ago to $1 billion unicorn this spring. And they did that by landing and expanding even with individual users. Right. I think they lost track when they started to do commercialization. And so people then they have to pull back. I mean, everybody, there's lots of companies, Docker, there's no shortage of these companies, Red Hat, that have found these same mistakes. And so my view is it is a sensitive and tight walk to basically make sure that you know how to keep track of the community. And I'm not just talking about open source community, the community of users and prospects with the people who are wanting to pay. And there's a difference between what we've learned the hard way between the people who pay and the people who use. And what I mean by that is many of the users inside organizations are not the payers.
Right.
The companies are the payers. So you have to make sure these are two different customer sets. The finance team is the paying set. The user or the developer is a different set. And you've got to make sure both of them are in balance, which is a really interesting dilemma.
So would you agree that understanding the full breadth of your customer profiles, both paid and unpaid, is a way of managing or balancing community expectations against commercial imperatives?
And I'm going to say three of them: paid and unpaid. I'm going to say paid and unpaid users, and paid and unpaid enterprises, which are paying for their users. And you've got to keep them both understanding what is the benefit to them. And I don't care, an unpaid user has benefits, right? You've got to make sure that it's crystal clear to both those types of constituents what you're doing for them, how you're doing it for them, to make sure they know what's in it for them. If you're really going to be obsessed about somebody else, you've got to constantly think about with them, what's in it for me, which is otherwise the radio station, what's in it for you, Whiffy. So
Dylan, to your point, my philosophy there, my personal philosophy is that there shouldn't be, it should, community expectations and commercial imperatives should work hand in hand. They shouldn't be opposing to one another. And they are opposing to one another when there are members of your communities who are customer profiles that you don't incorporate into your planning. You do not understand the full breadth of
correct.
All
that is you've just covered the critical message. I think what happens is, and I'll just take the example, these developer organizations that start with the developer don't realize there's other constituents. So they focus on one more than another. It's an or. I keep trying to tell people it's and, it's men and women, it's East and West, it's Republicans and Democrats.
Agreed.
It's not opposite sexes. There's a lot of words we all use that say it's or it's opposite. That is not the way to build community.
Agreed. Awesome. All right. Past board roles. So your past board roles follow a pattern: value creation, value capture, and exit. Where is Hive? Well, assuming you're going to follow that pattern here, but although you've stated it doesn't, the board isn't talking about exit. Okay. But let's, we'll go with it here. Where is HiveMQ in that life cycle? And what are HiveMQ's? I'll change the question a little bit. What are HiveMQ's specific milestones for you, with the understanding that the board right now isn't looking at exit?
Yeah, I don't even think the board is even on value creation yet right now. I want to be really clear. They're like, can we deal with, can we solve the problems that Walker has identified in you? I sent your video to the board. We had a board meeting on two days ago. I sent your video to them. Go, how do you know this guy, Greg? I don't know him at all. I met him last Thursday, right? And so I think you've nailed everything literally because you obviously know the company. I think we're pre-value creation, which is, yes, we've created a lot of value. Yes, we have lots of users, but I think we're trying to figure out what the foundation is to build upon, right? The company's future. When we figure that out, that's this quarter we're working on, what is the foundation of our company? It's more than just messaging, right? It's who is the team? What is the technology? How we're dealing with pricing and product? What is the value creation model? How do we make sure we're customer obsessed? All those, I'm going to call them pre-value creation fundamentals. When we get that right, then we'll start thinking about what does value creation look like. Then we'll think about what value growth looks like. I'm telling you, exit is not even a word in any of my vocabulary for any of my companies, believe it or not, and especially not here.
So for me, for the community, everyone knows here that what I care about is a company planning for exit within 5 years. I never ask a company to go, we're never going to exit, because I own many companies. I don't know what I'm going to do more than 5 years from now. But as an executive, I do have a 5-year strategy. I mean, I know whether that's in my realm of possibility in the next 5 years. So all I'm looking for is an answer on that question. Are you looking to exit in the next 5 years? And I think as consumers, that's all we can really ask of OEMs. The market changes so much. There's variables that change. But John, let's do John Maldonado's next. And then, so are there any immediate changes we will see to how HiveMQ does business or the offerings it provides? I mean, I guess it's not.
The answer would be, it better be a lot of change. Thank you very much for the question. Hopefully the next time we get on the phone call, hopefully we'll do this the first part of the year, believe it or not, in January. This quarter is a big quarter for us, laying the foundation. The good news, as I said, the team is great, the technology is great, the customers are great, the partners are great. Getting the problems that you said solved, and they're not even problems, they're challenges for us to basically create growth around them. Getting those things fixed and getting them resolved this quarter is our journey. The exciting part is everybody knows what to do in this company, which is really exciting. And so I'm really very excited that says the first part of the year, people will see major changes from us, not in the next 90 days.
We're going to do Dylan's question, how do you balance open source? And then we're going to do Matt Paris's question after that, Josh. So how do you balance the open source commons that drives adoption against the proprietary layers that generate revenue? And I want to qualify that. So I actually would argue that the open source commons also generate revenue. Open source commons works in conjunction with intellectual property to drive revenue. The difference is one is open source and one is intellectual property, but because revenue is driven by value. But to Barry's point, you get value from the open source commons. So, but to the question, how do you balance the open source commons that drive adoption, that land, against the proprietary layers that generate revenue? That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't see it that way. I'm 100% aligned with you. I don't see it as, again, opposites, right? That's like opposite sexes, right? Republicans versus Democrats. I don't see it that way. I see open source and open core as two very complementary approaches to business and value creation. Yep. And I think when I think about my open source communities, they all stand for the same thing. There is no mission without margin, as I try to tell my not-for-profit companies too, right? There is just no mission without margin. There is no way to survive in the world without, Adam Smith's originally butcher, baker, candlestick maker. There is no way to do this stuff. So I see these things as complementary, and I don't think people see them in the right way, and therefore they put them at odds ends. So I think they're just different ways to go to market with different complementary solutions.
Good. So basically, overall value. The revenue creation comes from overall value. Right.
Correct. What are you doing for somebody that has value to them? And I want to say, I have another thesis. People don't really care whether there are obviously people who care about open source and closed, right? Proprietary, open gardens and closed gardens. But the reality is when it gets done, to go back to your original Steve Jobs quote, customers care about what are you giving them that creates value in their lives.
Yep. That's it. All right. This is a good question here. And I think, Matt Paris, the question to be answered, Josh, it's the one right before Dylan's. So this actually is the crux of the discussion about a HiveMQ 2.0, where HiveMQ is going, why it matters to the community. For me, as I see it, HiveMQ, to me, Pulse is the most important announcement because it's about, I hate this term, operationalizing data. But really, it is about converting data into decisions. That's what Pulse is all about. It's about creating that information platform on top of the message queue, which is the infrastructure, to convert data into decisions. But the real question, and then that lays the framework for the enablement of AI from the boardroom all the way to the plant floor. Because that's the challenge manufacturers are facing. Like, why is it they aren't able to unlock the potential of AI? And the answer is because they don't have the underlying building blocks in their infrastructure to unlock the potential. That's the problem. But the real crux of the question, go ahead and bring his question back up. The real crux here about whether HiveMQ is going to succeed or not is this. So Matt Paris leads digital at GE Appliances. So he is a big player in our community, and he also sits on the SESME working group to do writing standards for machine profiles. But the question to be answered is, can a message broker company, which is a commodity, does it have the competencies to become an information platform company, which are completely different domains? At the end of the day, this is the crux, right?
Correct. So if you think about it, that is always the crux. There's a great book on this called The Second Curve. There's two of them, literally, on this called The Second Curve. And what the research says is that most companies cannot transition from what made them great. It's Innovator's Dilemma, Clay Christensen. Most companies cannot progress from what made them great to what needs to make them great. They can't progress in their customer eyes. They can't progress in their partner relationships. They can't progress in their technology and product service offering or their pricing. So you now know why I'm brought in, because most times they don't have the competencies, they don't have the direction, they don't have the strategy to make those things happen. But what they really don't have is the courage and the fortitude, right? So you've seen all of these companies not make the transition, right? I mean, no doubt Walmart should have been Amazon.
Oh,
and
no,
there's no doubt
question.
Amazon, no doubt. And there's no doubt there were a lot of people who should have been OpenAI, and there's only OpenAI, right? And
Correct.
you can keep going. No doubt that Netflix should have been something other than that. But he did a great job making sure he went from disk to online. I think the good news here, once again, you've met Magnus. The good news is there are a lot of competencies here throughout the entire organization, from the sales organization to the marketing organization to product and engineering, that are waiting to be released to go ahead and do this. So I don't think this is going to be a problem from this company having the competencies to transition.
I totally agree. And I'm glad you brought up Magnus. I work with Magnus quite a bit. We've worked very, very closely. We worked closely at Prove It. We worked closely at ICC. We've had a million conversations at Hanover Messe, and something about Magnus that kind of stands out is that Magnus doesn't have conversations about technology absent the conversation of the problem he's trying to solve for the customer. So he never gets into these deep conversations about the machinations of the tech outside of the context of the problem he's trying to solve. And I would argue that is the core competency of being able to make that jump from commodity to platform value. I mean, and if Magnus has it and he's still at HiveMQ, then it means that HiveMQ must have it as well. Otherwise, he would have left for an organization that does have it. Okay,
that is correct.
Right.
There was a conversation between our CFO Mirko and some of the lead engineers this week that said, "Oh my gosh, these things that Barry's leading us to, we wanted to do 3-4 years ago, right?" So it's not like these things that you and I are talking about. Some people have them, some people do not, right? Some organizations have some people do not, right? Some organizations. I'm going to keep saying the same thing. When you talked about the technology is one of the core assets of the company and the customers are core assets, I will come back and say, and I don't say this about all companies I work with, the team is spectacular, right? This team has it in spades about what they want to do and how they want to get there. And so, and I appreciate your compliments of me, but if at my age, if I can be a really good leader, it's to support them in making sure the things like you're seeing this in Magnus, but you should meet others. You've seen this to Mark. The things they want to do, if I can let them do it and let them all have agency and empowerment to do that, I think you're going to see something spectacular from this company.
Yeah, but again, I got to bring that. Your leadership is important. Again, I'm not easy on people in the boardroom. Okay, most of the time I am not impressed with the board of directors, and generally I have to convince them they're not the smartest person in the room before we can ever even have a conversation. Like, hey, you're not even the smartest person in your organization. The people who do the actual work are the smartest people in the organization. You have specific domain expertise, and that's valuable. But overall, your mindset must be that I, as a leader, a decision maker, someone with a vote on the board, my votes have to be focused on unlocking the potential in the people who really know how to convert value in the business. But you must. The reason it matters, the reason you matter, is that you have to be able to identify that Magnus is someone that you have to enable at scale. You have to be able to identify that in him. And that is a leadership trait. Like I say to people all the time, my greatest gift from God is the ability to build teams. It's me being able to see building block A in person A, building block B in person B, combine a team together so that they are more than the sum of their parts. And that's your role in the organization: strategy, vision, mission, but the execution role is in the team building. And
correct.
So I don't want to downplay the importance of the CEO.
And I appreciate you coming back and saying that with me. I really do. I appreciate it I really do appreciate it in multiple dimensions. Most people say about me, I'm not a traditional CEO. And I want to remind people, I'm 72, right? So there's no way I want to be a traditional CEO anymore at 72. I think I'm going to go one step further. It is not me unlocking just Magnus. It's me unlocking, and people know this way. I'm doing this for one reason. I said this to you last week, to pay it forward, right? Because I had the same view of boards and investors and management teams that, gosh, I needed all this help, and where was everybody?
They're a
And
barrier. They're a barrier, not a resource, right?
That's correct. And there's great research. COSLA says the same thing. The 7% of boards are not helpful, and same with management teams. So I've got a completely antithesis view of that, which is my job, is to unlock the value of our customers so they can become part of the innovation cycle. Same thing with my people, same thing with our partners. I look at one step further. There are people in this team, and I'm talking to them, and they know I'm talking to because they're on this call. If I can unlock them, and they'll say to me, Barry, no one's ever done this for me, I've done something powerful in the universe.
Awesome. All right, two more. You have time for two more questions, and then
I have as much time as you want, Walker.
All right, perfect. So let's do Bernard's question next. So I'm having a hard time understanding what that means for customers introducing HiveMQ now as what it is good at now, which is messaging, and have now use cases for anything but transmitting information. So essentially what Bernard is saying is, I am struggling to understand the value proposition of why I should land HiveMQ today, okay, for messaging, if the direction is going to be transmitting information and I don't have a need for an information platform right now. Here, I'll answer after you go from my perspective.
So I think so we will always be the message. Well, I think we're going to be more. We're going to be the messaging platform for the world. Right. So our hope is that anybody that needs messaging will install us at scale, to the edge. Any type of device whatsoever in which they need security, observability, governance, and literally in a way that they understand that messaging is the core of their business, right? So you and I are having messaging going on today, right? Until it's interpreted into something where there's a report that said, what did Barry say to Walker? What did Walker say to Barry? Here's the main 3 points. That would be intelligence. And then what does it mean to your business? That would be autonomy. How do you implement what Walker and Barry said without Walker and Barry saying it again? That would be autonomy, which you don't need Barry and Walker at all, right? Messaging has value both in a synchronous and an asynchronous way, right? In lots of ways. We're doing synchronous today right now, right? And so if your business wants to build a messaging and basically at scale capability for transmitting data, which every company should be in this business.
That's the most important question, the at scale piece.
At scale. And I can't imagine, if you want to be part of the AI world, how not every business wants to be in this world, which is to provide messaging at scale, no matter what vertical you're in, no matter what horizontal. If you want to be participating in this $9 trillion revolution, which is everything, 76% of all customer and investor capital is moving to AI, which means the whole world is moving. 76% is a massive number. You need
biggest number ever. It's the biggest number ever at any given time. Yeah.
Ever, of all time. So if you want to be part of this, you need to fundamentally understand what data is being transmitted, by what machines, by which humans, to which machines, to which humans, at scale, at what location, at edge, right? Because we're moving to the edge of all networks. Then, only when you get that and you put that in place as a foundation, can you begin to think about what's the intelligence from all that data that's being moved around my entire organization, not locked in silos, and literally bring that data to people who need it to make informed decisions as predictive recommendations. Then you can finally get to a place where there's autonomy and agency for humans in their lives.
Yeah, it's a good answer. And to Bernard's point, Bernard, when everyone starts collecting data, connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize, find patterns, report, solve, and then you have this, and then you do that iteratively, and now you have a digital infrastructure. A digital infrastructure is a thing that a smart thing can plug into, and it can consume data and information. It gets all the context it needs to solve whatever problem it's mandated to solve. You then plug into a digital supply chain. That's part of the goals here. You want to be plugged into not just the links upstream from you that you know. You want to be plugged into a supply chain where I'm connected to all the links in the supply chain, all possible suppliers, all possible customers. You want to be in this digital that digital supply chain is the goal. 3 to 5 years to become smart, then you plug into digital supply chain. That journey, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. It starts with connect, collect, store. Okay, for the very first iteration. In that first step, Bernard, you don't need scale. You can install Mosquito on a Raspberry Pi. You can, what you would be irresponsible to not understand that if this goes well, I'm going to need scale. So therefore, I shouldn't paint myself into a corner. I should start with something that will scale. And so that's where HiveMQ as a message broker, the commodity of the message broker, when you piece them together, you get the value of scale. You should start with something that will scale, to your point.
And the thing about this, think about the way Amazon, remember Amazon it's from A to Z. And the way you should think about messaging is that you're part of an ecosystem. Even if you don't know it, you're part of a latent network. You're part of a supply chain, part of a buy chain, which is customer chain.
Yes.
And if you don't think about that, you can send signals, messages into your supply chain or into your buy chain, which remember, signals and messaging is not just about your organization. It is about your extended organization. So if you don't pick a messaging platform that you can extend into the supply and buy chain, I'm just giving people a sense of where we're headed, then you can't really give intelligence to those that you should be caring about as well. Remember, it's not just about you and your stuff. It's about everybody that you serve and who serves you. Remember, service is spelled SERVICE, not SERVUS.
Yes.
I know Walker's going to steal that in his next speeches.
I am definitely going to steal it. Bernard follows up with, I'm sure I'm not the only one wondering. It would be a huge move in perception of HiveMQ and maybe a bit disturbing for the ones that are using it at the moment. The question is, why would I need HiveMQ 2.0? I want to, before Barry responds.
You should do it, Walker, because you've already answered a few times. Go for it.
Correct. So the building blocks of HiveMQ 2.0 as a company, HiveMQ is the company, not just an MQTT broker. Yeah. HiveMQ 2.0 is all about the future direction of the company. It isn't about rebuilding HiveMQ, the enterprise broker, from scratch into some new version. The building blocks of the future of the company start with the commodity that is messaging on the edge, and then goes up through the value stream of messaging at scale, and then an information platform bolts onto that, and then an AI platform bolts onto that. So the underlying building blocks don't change. So you're not switching from one to another. What you are doing is extending that. The HiveMQ 2.0 is all about building the tools that will unlock the potential in that which they already make their core business, which is the broker.
Correct. If you think about it, the way I think about it, we're extending right, which is all the way to the edge, and we're extending up into the organization, which is to the C-suite, to the D-suite, director suite, to the M-suite, because all of them need to be connected to messaging in an organization. And right now, those are disconnected pieces. And so we've got to figure out how to fundamentally connect everybody, and that's just inside the organization. Think about how we've got to connect messaging to the entire supply chain and buy chain, to your customers' customers, to allow you to think, oh my gosh, if I got everybody in a single messaging platform that's connected to my organization, how much more I'll know, how much more I can do, how much more I'll understand. And if that gives me intelligence, then how much more I can accomplish for my customers. And that's customers of customers, right?
So there's a couple of technical questions in here, like Annabelle, your question about the open API. We're not asking any technical questions in this. I'm going to reserve that for a conversation I'm going to have with Magnus and with the CTO.
And with the CPO. There's a brand new CPO, Tim Hall, you'll meet, who's just joining the company on Monday, who's been in this space for a long time. So you'll be able to, I'm sure you'll connect with them all. I'm sure you'll enjoy all the conversations.
But Mohammed Safwat, from the LinkedIn question, this is a good question. So I have another question from a different point of view to Barry. As CEO, does HiveMQ, are they going to extend more beyond the smart manufacturing to smart cities and smart mobility? Okay. To be the trusted AI integration layer that a city operator should depend on. And also, does the system integrator, are they a part of your ecosystem, not only end users? So that first part of the question is a very fair question. I think most of us can interpret what the answer is, but
the answer is yes. You can imagine yes, but you also have to understand that we're already moving in this direction all the way into the data centers, right, of today's world. We have to be centered to the data that's being transmitted, being created. So you're going to see us move in a variety of different ways, and the good news is we're being pulled, just like Walker pulled me into this podcast. We're being pulled with our messaging platform into lots of verticals, lots of opportunities. And so the good news is you're going to see lots of expansion on our messaging platform, but we're also being pulled in for intelligence. There are a lot of industries that want us for the intelligence there.
Perfect. All right. So we still have more than 200 people watching live. We have collected all the questions. All right. So we weren't gonna. I saw a private message here that said, "Hey, just so you know, we've collected all the questions. So we will almost certainly do something like this again. We're going to be doing the Pulse announcement. I think in the beginning of December now. Right. I think we're doing it the first week in December. We will be doing the webinar that was scheduled for today at the beginning of December. But there will be further conversations that we're going to have with folks at HiveMQ in a format like this, because I can't state this enough. This is incredible. I mean, I told Rick Bellata in my DM, I'm like, dude, this is like the most exciting announcement. It is exactly what the market needs. It is the thing that's missing. You know, you guys may hear me talking about, I don't think large language models and large reasoning models are the path forward in industry. That is for using autonomous agents. If the goal is to get to an autonomous agent, one that doesn't require explicit, a one-to-one relationship between output and human permission, right? We want to get to where maybe 80 agents can do 80% of the work autonomously, and human beings are focused on real value creation for businesses. If we want to get to that, we're going to have to move away from large language models and to small language models, where we are training on very, very specific data sets. The direction that HiveMQ is going is laying the foundation to enable that for real. Because right now, that platform is missing. That isn't there in industry. It doesn't exist. No one's doing it. The best we can do right now is bolt MCP servers onto existing REST APIs. This is a very, very exciting announcement about the direction of the company.
This is critical. Yeah. People understand what you just said. This is critical. And people need to understand they're going to build their small language models. I think they're going to build something that's called machine learning models as well, that are literally going to be small as well, between machine and machine. This foundation we're building will allow companies to create their own autonomy, not give all their assets to OpenAI. And this is going to be critically important to the industrial sector to fundamentally create their own future.
And we'll close with Annabelle's comment here. So we bring that up here. Thank you, Barry and Walker. Transparency builds trust. Lots of trust was built here today. Yes. I want to say, Barry, thank you. Most chief executives are not going to jump at this opportunity. They're going to weigh risk. I can tell you this right now. I gave Barry the option to record this and not do it live. I said, hey, we can even do it recorded. That way, if something said that you reconsider, hey, we shouldn't share that publicly, we just wouldn't publish the podcast. And because we don't allow people to edit stuff out. And Barry said, no, let's do it live. Let's take the questions. Let's do it live. And I said, are you okay with me asking all the things I asked you here privately? He said, absolutely. Let's do it. So I was very excited to do this. And it says a lot about, Barry's character and by extension now the character at HiveMQ. So I'm super, super excited. I'm super excited about the direction. So,
Walker,
all right.
Walker, you're a superstar. I'm not going to try to match weights, with you, but you're going to show me how to do it one day without hurting myself. But the reality is, I think we'll have a great time in this journey. We'll look back one day, maybe a year from now, and say, wow, that is something special that happened there.
All right. So good. We will have further conversations here in the next month and a half or so, folks. All right. But to Barry Libert, I really appreciate your time, to Mark, the team, everybody who made this possible. Thank you for joining us. And for the audience, comment down below, what questions should we have asked that we didn't ask? I hope we hit them all. Like, subscribe, comment down below, and we'll see you guys in the next one.